the first siege. Me and my undergeared character are ready to get one-shot, and soon the peaceful streets of Stonegard will be covered in streams of blood. This siege turned out to be a very intense and interesting one, because the defending guild already fled the server before the walls took their first hits. But even though the throne was abandoned, it would turn out to be an intense struggle to the death. Though why was the throne deserted so close to the siege? Shortly after the strongest guild failure took foothold between the rugged walls of Stonegard, an alliance of bloodlusting Turks called Disaster entered the server. It was like 1663 all over again when the Turkish hordes invaded Western Europe and were repelled last second, though this time it seemed the Turks would win. These jobless pay-to-win Andes always managed to bring at least between 250 and 280 players to each PvP event, which was a lot more than we were able to deploy. But even though the odds were stacked against us heavily, we would draw our blades, bows, wands and shields to charge into the Turkish hordes that would most definitely shred us into a mist of blood. But things would turn out a bit differently than we expected. We knew we were heavily outnumbered, while one guild of our alliance shattering before the siege and another only at half strength, leaving us with only 3 guilds for the battle ahead. Though we also knew that we did not have defending forces inside the castle, so we chose a tactic of speed. Our plan was set. Push hard on the left flank of the castle towards the sewer system. When we would reach the choke point between walls and cliff, our main force would turn around, building a wall of shields and meat, while a small group would enter the sewer system to push further into the castle. Once inside, they would directly move towards the second sewer system to enter the inner courtyard. Once there, they would capture the respawn point. If they succeeded in their endeavor, Operation Sacrifice would start, killing ourselves as fast as possible to spawn near the throne room and to hold this position as long as possible. So the siege had begun, and our forces headed towards the sewer system. As we reached the castle walls and turned around, we would be faced with nothing. No one was there.
Surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
As we waited for enemies to arrive and our special speed forces were heading into the sewers, we got new orders. Push forward towards the siege ruins to capture them fast. As we were moving out towards the siege ruins, we were intercepted by a huge force moving towards our position. The enemy forces we were anticipating to come in way earlier had finally arrived. Apparently, these morons were standing too close to the castle when the siege started, so they got teleported away, which left them with a huge way they had to run to return to their fucking positions. So we repositioned to give our advancing troops on the inside more time and engage the enemy in a bloody battle in hopes to buy enough time for our plan to succeed. And then the call came.
We're inside!
And Operation Sacrifice started. As fast as we could, we threw our bodies into the enemy line so we could respawn inside these hallowed halls. In the meantime, we also managed to capture 2 pillage stones to fulfill our main objective. We always knew from the start that we would not be able to snatch the throne from Disaster's asses, so our aims were different. Set on getting as much Lucent and Solent out of this siege as possible. But for how long would we be able to hold our position? To give us an upper hand while holding this key position of the castle, we needed to flood the sewer system, but no member of our alliance was currently holding the power of heavy rain. So we decided to make a deal with the player that had this said power we needed, and they did not disappoint. Details of the specific deal are Shortly after we managed to take hold of the inner courtyard and the first enemy forces arrived in front of the gate, we messaged our friend that it was time to cast a wall of water into the sewer system. And not shortly after the message was sent, it started to pour from the skies. We now had some time to reposition our troops, with the range DPS taking hold on top of the inner gates, while some melee troops were stationed in the inner yard and shortly behind the range DPS to suicide down into the main entrance towards the enemy to buy us more time if necessary. The battle raged on, and in the distance the first castle walls were reduced to dust. More and more hostile forces swarmed the castle, and more enemies fell by the hands of our ranged forces. The rain poured down on the bloody streets of Stonegard, but it would not last forever. As soon as the last water drops touched our blades, we repositioned a small unit of ranged damage dealers to deal with all rats in the sewer system at a safe distance. So even though our wet defense was gone, we still made sure no one could enter the courtyard from down below. The rain had stopped, but our ranged DPS made sure to still let hellfire rain upon all who dared to step too close to the inner gate. No one came even close until we spotted some enemies approaching from above. A small force managed to climb the inner walls, and not only that, they placed down a summoning portal. So our melee forces were deployed into the upper courtyard to repel the invaders. We murdered every single soul that dared to set foot on our courtyard, and sooner than later they needed to break off their attempt. Though shortly after we dealt with the forces from above, we saw the first siege golem approaching the inner gate. Now all melee forces that held the upper courtyard before were ordered in front of the gate, waiting until the gate's metal bars would burst, letting in a flow of steel and iron. While our close combat forces would make ready for the inevitable, our mages and rangers tried to thin out the approaching forces while also trying to destroy the enemy golem. But it was too late. Not shortly after the golem arrived, the gates flung wide open and the enemy poured in masses. Even though we would now face an enemy that was superior in numbers and equipment, we did not back down. Human wave after human wave was repelled, life after life was given to hold the inner courtyard. But even though we managed to hold on way longer than expected, we were overrun in the end. Shortly after our position fell, we gathered in front of the castle again, but the inevitable had already happened. The whole castle was now in the hands of disaster, and any attempt getting inside of the walls of Stonegard again ended up in front of them. Even though we fought against an enemy that was superior numbers, equipment, and in my case even skill, we managed to plunder at least 412 Lucent as well as roughly 10 million Solent for each member of our alliance.